The airport smelled faintly of coffee, disinfectant, and midnight fatigue. Sara Malik stood by the boarding gate, clutching her phone as if it were the only thing tethering her to reality. Her reflection in the glass looked calm, almost composed, but her pulse betrayed her, quick, restless, eager. It had been 6 months of late-night calls, blurry video chats, and words typed faster than thoughts. 6 months of building a relationship across pixels and time zones, where emotion replaced presence and imagination filled the gaps. Tonight, that distance would end. Aaron Holt, 31. Graphic designer from Texas. His voice had always carried warmth, that low, steady tone that could soothe her even on the worst days. He had listened when she broke down after work, made her laugh when she couldn't sleep, told her she was different, real, and she had believed him, completely. But beneath the thrill, something else lurked, an unease she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the suddenness of it all, or maybe it was her mother's voice still echoing in her head. You don't really know someone until you see how they live. Sara brushed the thought aside as the boarding announcement crackled through the speakers. Flight 228 to Dallas now boarding. She tightened her scarf and took a deep breath. The city lights of Chicago blinked behind her, fading memories of a life that felt safe but small. She wanted more, wanted to feel alive again. The flight was half empty. She found her seat by the window and settled in. Outside, snowflakes smeared the glass like faint brushstrokes. She texted Aaron one last time before takeoff. Sara, boarding now. Can't believe this is happening. Aaron, been waiting for this all week. Drive safe after you land, okay? Drive safe. The wording made her smile, though she noted it. Odd, since he'd be the one picking her up. Maybe he was just distracted. Maybe, as the plane lifted, Sara stared into the night sky, the world below shrinking to a scatter of lights. The hum of the engines dulled her thoughts, but one question lingered. Why did he always avoid video calls lately? He used to FaceTime every night. Now it was just voice messages, sweet but distant, always with an excuse about lighting or work deadlines. Her mind wandered through memories. The first time he called her sunshine, the way he described his dream house near Austin, and that one picture he sent of himself on the porch, face half in shadow. She remembered zooming in, trying to see him clearly. By the time the plane began its descent, her excitement had reshaped itself into something taut and uncertain. The sky outside was deep blue, the first hints of dawn brushing the horizon. Dallas looked vast, unfamiliar, a sprawl of highways and glowing signs. When she stepped out of the terminal, the warm Texas air hit her like a different world. The parking lot shimmered under fluorescent lights. She scanned the crowd of waiting drivers, her suitcase dragging behind her, heartbeat quickening. Then she saw him. Aaron stood beside a dark gray pickup truck, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a denim jacket. His expression softened when their eyes met. He smiled, a slow, almost shy smile that melted her hesitation for a moment. "Sara," he said, voice quieter than she expected. "You made it." She smiled back, breath catching. "Of course I did." For a brief second, everything felt right. The months apart, the doubt, the distance, it all seemed to dissolve in that fragile moment of connection. But as he reached for her bag, she noticed his hand tremble slightly. His eyes flickered, not quite meeting hers. Something about his movements felt rehearsed, cautious, like a man performing normalcy. "Long drive to Austin," he murmured, opening the truck door. "Hope you don't. Mind country roads." Sara laughed softly, though her chest tightened. "As long as you don't drive too fast." Aaron's smile didn't reach his eyes. The truck door shut with a dull echo, As they pulled out of the airport, the city lights faded behind them, swallowed by the vast, black stretch of Texas night. Sara watched the rearview mirror until the last glimmer disappeared. She didn't know it yet, but she had just crossed the invisible line between safe and never coming back. The hum of the highway filled the silence between them. Streetlights streaked across the windshield in rhythmic flashes, lighting Aaron's face in fragments, calm one moment, unreadable the next. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles pale against the dark leather. Sara tried to break the quiet. "You weren't kidding about these country roads," she said, smiling faintly. "Feels like we're the only ones out here." Aaron chuckled, but the sound was hollow. "That's kind of the point. No traffic, no noise, just space to breathe." His tone was gentle, yet distant, like he was talking to himself more than to her. Sara nodded, pretending to be comforted. She leaned her head against the window, watching the endless stretch of road. The thought flickered again. He felt different from the man on the phone. When they finally reached the outskirts of Austin, dawn had fully bloomed. The first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, casting golden stripes across the dashboard. Aaron turned into a small gas station, saying he needed to grab something. "I'll be right back," he said, stepping out without waiting for her reply. Sara watched him walk toward the convenience store, his shoulders stiff, his steps quick. She noticed he kept his head down even when passing the clerk. When he returned, he handed her a coffee without a word. "Thanks," she murmured, though her fingers brushed his when she took the cup, and he immediately pulled away. The tiny gesture struck her more than she wanted to admit. They drove another hour before the city gave way to open land. Flat fields, rue, stead fences, and the occasional billboard fading into the distance. Aaron seemed more at ease here, away from the lights. "So," she began carefully, "this is where you grew up?" He shook his head. "No, just where I ended up." The way he said it carried weight, like there was a story buried in those few words. Sara wanted to ask more, but something in his tone warned her not to. Instead, she watched the scenery, the way the morning mist clung to the earth like memory refusing to let go. When they finally reached his home, it wasn't what she expected. The house stood at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by trees that swayed quietly in the wind. It looked lived in, yet oddly untouched, like time had stopped paying attention. Aaron parked, stepped out, and went around to open her door. His politeness felt automatic, practiced. "Welcome to Texas," he said, smiling faintly. She tried to mirror his warmth. "It's beautiful out here." He nodded but didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed her suitcase and led her up the porch steps. Sara noticed his eyes dart toward one of the windows. Drawn curtains, a faint movement behind them maybe, or her imagination. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and something else, sterile, like disinfectant. A chill brushed her skin. Aaron dropped her bag near the couch. "I'll make breakfast," he offered. "You should rest." She hesitated, wanting to hug him, to feel that spark they once had through screens. But when she stepped closer, he moved past her toward the kitchen, avoiding her gaze entirely. Sara forced a smile, whispering under her breath, "Maybe he's just nervous." But as she stood alone in the quiet living room, watching sunlight crawl across the wooden floor, the thought returned like a whisper she couldn't silence. The man she had loved for 6 months felt like a perfect stranger. The morning light had softened into pale gold by the time Aaron's truck rolled down the last stretch of gravel road. Dust rose behind them like a fading memory. Sara watched the horizon flatten into nothing but open fields and clusters of oak trees, their shadows twisting in the Texas sun. "So this is it," Aaron said, pulling to a stop in front of a sprawling, single-story house. It was larger than she imagined, modern in shape but oddly lifeless. The paint, once white, had dulled into a faint gray. Every window was covered, curtains drawn tight as if the house were trying to hide from the world. Sara stepped out, stretching her legs, her shoes crunching on the gravel. "It's peaceful," she said, forcing brightness into her tone. Aaron smiled thinly. "Yeah, peaceful. No neighbors for a mile." The words hung heavy in the air. Sara looked around. No mailboxes, no other houses, just the sound of wind brushing through dry grass. A crow cawed somewhere in the distance, the only sign of life. Inside, the house was immaculate, too immaculate. The scent of cleaning agents lingered, sharp and clinical. Every surface gleamed, every object seemed perfectly placed. Yet something about it felt staged, like a picture of a home rather than one truly lived in. Sara trailed her fingers along the kitchen counter. "You really keep this place spotless," she said. Aaron shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "Helps me think. Helps me stay calm." She smiled, though uneasily. The tension between them still lingered from the car ride. They hadn't spoken much after leaving the gas station. She wanted to ask what was bothering him, but his silence was a wall she couldn't climb. As she wandered down the hallway, she noticed several doors, each one locked. The brass knobs gleamed, untouched. "Hey, what's in here?" she asked lightly, rattling one of them. Aaron's voice came sharp from the kitchen, into storage. The tone startled her. "Oh, sorry, just curious." He appeared in the doorway, his expression softening. "Didn't mean to snap, it's just some stuff I don't want to think about right now." Sara nodded slowly, pretending to accept the answer. But when he turned away, she caught the faintest flicker of something in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Later, as they sat on the porch drinking coffee, the sun dipped low over the horizon. The stillness was eerie, almost oppressive. Crickets began their steady chorus, filling the silence neither of them seemed willing to break. "So, what do you usually do out here?" Sara asked. "Work, read, fix things," Aaron replied. "It's quiet, keeps me sane." She forced a small laugh. "I'd go crazy out here alone." Aaron's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You get used to it." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. For a brief second, Sara thought she heard something. A faint, strangled sound carried on the breeze. It was distant, but unmistakably human, a cry quickly smothered by silence. Her hand froze around her mug. "Did you hear that?" Aaron didn't turn his head. "Coyotes," he said quickly. "They sound strange sometimes." But she wasn't sure. The sound hadn't been wild. It had been desperate. Sara stared out into the dimming fields, unease creeping under her skin like a slow chill. Somewhere beyond those trees, someone or something had cried out. Aaron stood, collecting the mugs. "Come inside," he said quietly. "It gets cold fast." As he closed the door behind them, the faint echo of that scream still rang in her mind, fading into the dark house that seemed to breathe with secrets. By the time dusk fell, the house felt smaller, its walls closer, its silence heavier. The day's warmth had drained from the air, replaced by that eerie stillness that seemed to settle whenever Aaron stopped speaking. He moved through the kitchen quietly, preparing dinner with mechanical precision. Sara sat at the oak dining table, tracing the grain of the wood with her fingers. The scent of roasted chicken filled the air, homey but somehow hollow, like the smell didn't belong here. She wanted to say something, to close the distance, but each time she caught Aaron's eyes, he looked away first. When he finally set the plates down, he said softly, "Hope you like it. It's been a while since I cooked for someone." "It smells great," she said, forcing a smile. "Feels nice. Sitting down like this." They ate mostly in silence, the soft clink of forks the only sound. Outside, cicadas screamed into the night. Sarah's mind drifted back to the faint cry she'd heard earlier. She hadn't mentioned it again, afraid of seeming paranoid. But now, in the dim light of the dining room, the memory pressed harder against her chest. Trying to ease the tension, she said, "I still can't believe I'm actually here. Feels like a dream." Aaron looked up, his expression unreadable. "Dreams can be tricky things," he said after a pause. "Sometimes they show you what you want, not what's real." His words sent a small chill through her, but she pushed on. "You know, I used to dream about moving away from home. My mom wanted me to stay close, but I just needed space. Growing up, it was always chaos. My dad left when I was 9. My mom was working 2 jobs. I kind of learned early on that love doesn't always stay." Aaron nodded slowly, eyes fixed on his plate. "I get that," he murmured. "Do you?" she asked softly, leaning forward. "You never really told me about your family. You always changed the subject." For a moment he didn't move. The candle between them flickered, its flame casting uneven light across his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "There's not much to tell. My parents are gone. Haven't talked to my brother in years." Sara studied him. "That must be hard." He shrugged. "You learn to live without people. Sometimes it's better that way." Something in his tone, flat, resigned, made her heart ache. "Aaron, what happened?" she asked gently. "You can tell me. You know that, right?" He set his fork down, the metal scraping faintly against the plate. "It's not a good story," he said. "I don't care. I just want to know you." For a long moment, the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. Then Aaron stood abruptly and walked to the sink. His back was rigid. "Some things don't need to be known, Sara. Sometimes they ruin everything." Her chest tightened. "You don't have to protect me." "I'm not protecting you," he said, his voice low but shaking. "I'm protecting myself." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Sara wanted to reach out, to ask what he meant, but the look in his eyes when he turned around stopped her. There was fear there, raw and human, but behind it, something else. Aaron exhaled sharply, forcing a smile that didn't belong to his face. "You must be tired. Long day." Sara hesitated. "Aaron, tomorrow," he interrupted softly. "We'll talk tomorrow." He blew out the candle, leaving the room in shadow. Sara sat still, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall. The air smelled faintly of wax and smoke. Her heart pounded with questions she didn't dare ask again. In the darkness, she whispered to herself, "What are you hiding?" From somewhere deep in the house, a door clicked shut. Slow, deliberate. The clock read 1:42 a.m. when Sara opened her eyes again. The house was silent, but not peaceful. Its silence had a pulse, a presence. Somewhere in the darkness, wood creaked, soft and slow, as if the house were breathing. She rolled onto her side, staring at the ceiling. Aaron's words from dinner echoed in her head. "Some things don't need to be known." The way he'd said it still clung to her skin like static. Sleep wouldn't come. Her curiosity, always her greatest flaw, gnawed at her. Finally, she slipped out of bed. The floor was cool beneath her feet as she padded down the hallway. The house looked different at night. Longer, emptier. The shadows stretched deep across the walls. The doors she'd noticed earlier, all locked, stood like silent guards along the corridor. One door, however, was slightly ajar. Sara froze. She was sure it had been locked before. A faint draft wafted through the crack, carrying the scent of dust and something chemical. sterile, like a hospital corridor. She hesitated. Then curiosity won. The hinges groaned softly as she pushed it open. Inside was a small study, dimly lit by moonlight filtering through the blinds. A heavy oak desk sat in the center, its surface meticulously neat except for a single drawer left slightly open. Sara's heart quickened. "Aaron," she whispered, just to make sure. No answer. She stepped closer and tugged the drawer open. Papers rustled. Bottles clinked faintly. Inside were rows of orange prescription bottles, most of them empty, some labeled with faded print. Oxycodone, sertraline, tramadol, all expired. She picked one up and turned it in her hand. The patient's name read Holt, A. Her pulse quickened. Underneath the bottles lay a manila folder, edges worn from use. The label read, in neat handwriting, surgeries. She hesitated before opening it, her stomach tightening. Inside were medical documents, charts, scans, and a printed report with the header, Post-operative complications, reconstructive procedure. Sara skimmed the first page, her eyes darting through lines of dense text she barely understood. Then she froze on one section. Procedure type, genital reconstructive surgery, post-trauma. Outcome, partial failure due to infection and tissue necrosis. She covered her mouth, staring at the words. Her mind raced. This wasn't just a medical condition. It was something Aaron had hidden deeply, something that explained the distance, the avoidance, the strange fear in his eyes. A chill rippled through her. She placed the folder back but couldn't stop glancing at it. The black letters burned into her thoughts. Suddenly, a sound. A floorboard creaked behind her. Sara spun around. The hallway was empty. Only darkness stared back. She waited, her breath caught in her throat. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator from somewhere down the hall. Her hands trembled as she closed the drawer, trying to make it look untouched. But as she turned to leave, her elbow brushed against a small framed photo on the desk. It toppled over with a soft clatter. Sara froze again. The photo faced down. Slowly, she picked it up. It was Aaron, much younger, standing with another man. Both wore hospital gowns, smiling stiffly at the camera. But the other man's face had been scratched out. Deep, deliberate gouges cutting through the print. Sara set it back carefully, heart hammering. She stepped into the hallway and shut the door behind her, her mind spinning with questions she didn't want to voice. Back in bed, she lay stiff, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every sound, the wind, the ticking clock, the distant hum, seemed sharper now. When she finally drifted toward sleep, her last thought wasn't of fear, but of revelation. She now understood why Aaron didn't want to be touched, why his eyes flinched from hers, why he'd said, "I'm protecting myself." But what she didn't yet understand, what would soon shatter everything, was how far he'd go to keep that secret buried. The next morning came too bright, too calm, for the storm swirling inside Sara's chest. She sat at the kitchen table, her untouched coffee cooling beside her. Every sound in the house, the ticking clock, the faint creak of the wooden floorboards, seemed magnified, watching her, waiting for something to break. Aaron walked in quietly, his hair still damp from a shower. He gave her a small, uncertain smile. "Morning," he said, reaching for a mug. Sara studied him for a moment, his movements careful, his voice soft, almost fragile. The man she had flown across the country to meet felt like a stranger wearing a mask that no longer fit. "Aaron," she said finally, her tone flat. "We need to talk." He froze, hand midway to the coffee pot. "About what?" "About the drawer." He turned slowly, his face paling. "What drawer?" Her voice trembled despite her effort to stay calm. "The one in your study. The one with the medication and the medical files." For a moment, neither of them breathed. The sound of the clock filled the silence like a drumbeat. Aaron's eyes darted toward the hallway just for a second, but it was enough. She knew he understood. "You went through my things," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You locked every other door in this house," she replied. "That one was open. I didn't mean to. I just couldn't sleep." He took a step closer, voice tightening. "You had no right." Sara's throat tightened. "You had 6 months to tell me the truth. You let me fly here, stay in your home, sleep beside you. And you said nothing." Aaron's shoulders sagged. His anger drained, replaced by something else. Exhaustion. "It wasn't supposed to matter anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought if I could just be normal for once, if someone could love me without seeing what's broken, maybe I'd finally stop feeling like a monster." The words hit her harder than she expected. "Aaron," she started, but he cut her off. "You saw the file," he said, trembling now. "You know what happened. I had an accident years ago. Surgery after surgery, all of it failed. I can't—" His voice cracked, his jaw tightening as if forcing the words out would kill him. "I can't be who you think I am." Sara's breath caught. The confession hung heavy between them. She wanted to say something kind, something understanding, but shock overpowered compassion. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" she whispered. "You lied to me, Aaron. For months." "I didn't lie," he said sharply. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing," she snapped. His eyes darkened. "No, it's not." She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. "You think I wouldn't have accepted you? You didn't even give me a chance!" Aaron's composure cracked. He slammed his fist against the counter, making her flinch. "Because no one ever does, Sara. They all look at me like you're looking at me now, pity and disgust wrapped up in one face." Her voice wavered. "I'm not disgusted." "Yes, you are," he hissed, stepping closer. "I see it. You can't even look at me the same way." She took a step back, heart pounding. "You're scaring me." His breath came fast, his expression collapsing into panic. "I didn't mean to. Sara, please, I just—" But the moment was already broken. The air between them was thick with fear and shame. Sara whispered, "I need to get some air," and turned toward the door. Aaron didn't follow. He just stood there, shaking, staring at the folder she had placed on the table. Outside, the sky was overcast, gray swallowing blue. Sara leaned against the porch railing, her mind spinning with everything she'd heard, everything she'd seen. Inside, through the cracked door, she could hear him pacing, soft, restless footsteps that never stopped. She didn't realize it then, but something in Aaron had shifted, something irreversible. By nightfall, silence would no longer be safety. It would be warning. The air in the house felt wrong. Too quiet, too thick. Sara stood on the porch, staring at the line of trees behind the property swaying under the dim Texas sky. The silence was deceptive, too calm after the storm inside. She rubbed her arms against the chill, trying to steady her shaking hands. From behind her came the sound of the door opening. Slow, careful. Aaron's voice followed, low and strained. "Sara, please come inside." She didn't move. "I just need a minute." He stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the porch. "You've been out here for an hour," he said softly, though his tone carried something sharp beneath it. "You can't just walk away from this." "I'm not walking away," she said, finally turning to face him. "I'm trying to process everything. You dropped a bomb on me, Aaron." His expression flickered. Hurt, then anger. "A bomb? You make it sound like I did something to you." "You lied to me for 6 months," she said, her voice trembling. You built this entire relationship on pretending." He laughed bitterly. "Pretending? You think what we had was fake?" "I don't know what we had," she whispered. "You wouldn't let me see who you really were." Something inside him snapped. His jaw clenched, his shoulders stiffened. "You want to see who I am," he said, voice breaking into something dangerous. "You really want to see?" He moved closer. Too close. The porch light caught his face, his eyes glassy with rage and pain. "You think I wanted to hide? You think I liked lying? Every time I looked at you, I wanted to tell you the truth. But I knew what would happen. And now—" His voice cracked. "Now it's happening." Sara stepped back toward the door, heart pounding. "Aaron, stop! You're scaring me!" He reached out, grabbing her arm, not hard but enough to make her flinch. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said, his voice trembling. "I just need you to understand." "I do understand," she said quickly, trying to stay calm. "You've been through hell, I get that, but you need to let me go inside." His grip tightened. "No, you'll call someone, you'll leave." Her pulse thudded in her ears. "Aaron, please, you're not thinking clearly." He let out a harsh laugh, his eyes wild. "Oh, I'm thinking perfectly clearly. You came here to see me, to know me, and now that you do, you want to run." "I'm not running," she said, voice breaking. "I just need space." He slammed his palm against the porch railing, making her jump. "You were supposed to understand me," he shouted, his voice echoing into the night. "You said you cared. You said you wanted to know everything about me." Tears blurred Sara's vision. "I do care. But this isn't you, Aaron. This is fear talking. You need help." His face twisted in anguish, confusion flickering between bursts of rage. "Help?" he repeated. "You think I'm crazy? No, But before she could finish, he grabbed her shoulders, shaking her once. Not violently, but enough for panic to explode inside her. "Don't lie to me," he shouted. "You pity me like everyone else." Sara's instincts took over. She shoved him back hard, stumbling toward the door, but he was faster. He moved in front of it, blocking her way, chest heaving, eyes glassy with tears. "You're not leaving me," he said softly now, voice trembling like a child's. "You can't. Not after everything." "Aaron, please," she whispered, her back against the wall. "You're hurting both of us." His body shook as he pressed his palms to his face. "I didn't want this," he muttered. "I just wanted someone to stay." In that fractured second, between guilt and fear, Sara saw her chance. Her eyes darted toward the keys on the counter, barely visible through the window. She swallowed her fear, calculating her next move. Because the man she thought she loved was gone, and what stood before her now was a man about to break completely. The tension from the porch had followed Sara inside like a shadow she couldn't shake off. Her body trembled, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, pretending things were fine. Aaron sat at the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. The storm inside him had quieted, but it wasn't over. It was the kind of silence that came before something far worse. "I'll make some tea," Sara murmured, voice barely steady. He didn't respond, just nodded, eyes hollow. In the kitchen, she moved quickly but quietly. Her phone lay on the counter, cracked screen reflecting the dim light. Dozens of missed notifications glowed up at her. 12 missed calls from Mia, 3 new messages. Her heart skipped. Mia always called when she couldn't shake a bad feeling. Sara's fingers trembled as she unlocked her phone. One message stood out. "Mia. You okay? You haven't texted since last night. Call me. Something feels off." Sara glanced toward the living room. Aaron hadn't moved. She typed fast, thumbs shaking. "Sara, he's not who I thought. I'm scared. If you don't hear from me..." She froze. Footsteps. Aaron's reflection appeared faintly on the glass cabinet beside her, moving closer, silent, watching. She forced a smile when she turned. "Just checking the time," she said quickly, slipping the phone behind her back. His eyes lingered on her too long. "You've been quiet," he said finally. "Are you still angry with me?" "I'm not angry," she lied. "Just tired." He nodded, but something about his stare made her chest tighten. He looked at her like he was memorizing her face. "You should rest," he murmured. "It's been a long day." Sara forced a nod and turned to pour water into the kettle. But when she heard him step closer again, her pulse quickened. The phone in her hand vibrated softly. Another message from Mia flashing across the screen. MIA. "Sara? Are you safe?" Her breath caught. Before she could reply, a hand shot out, fast, unrelenting, grabbing her wrist. Aaron's eyes locked on the glowing phone. "Who are you texting?" No one," she stammered, trying to pull back. "It's just Mia." He snatched the phone from her hand with startling force. The device clattered against the counter. His fingers moved quickly, scanning the screen. His expression changed. Disbelief, then betrayal. "He's not who I thought," he read aloud, voice trembling. "Is that what you think of me?" Sara's voice broke. "Aaron, please. I didn't mean—" "You were going to tell her, weren't you?" His tone hardened, every syllable soaked in hurt. "You were going to make me into some kind of monster." Tears stung her eyes. "I wasn't. I just needed someone to—" "To what? Rescue you?" he snapped. His face was flushed now, veins rising along his neck. "You think you can just expose me? After everything I told you?" He hurled the phone to the ground. It cracked in half, one piece sliding beneath the counter. The sharp sound echoed through the kitchen. Sara flinched, backing away. "Aaron, please. Just stop. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." But he wasn't listening. His chest rose and fell like a man drowning. "You don't get it," he whispered hoarsely. "I finally let someone in, and you're already leaving." She stepped backward toward the hallway, eyes darting to the door. "No one's leaving," she said gently, voice shaking. "Let's just talk, okay?" He stared at her for a long moment, breathing heavy. Then, in a terrifyingly calm voice, he said, "There's nothing left to talk about." Sara's heart pounded. The shattered phone lay between them, half lit, the unsent message glowing faintly on the cracked screen. "He's not who I thought." The message she never sent. And in that silence, between fear and fate, she realized something chillin'. Mia would know something was wrong, but by the time she came looking, it might already be too late. Morning came without sunlight. The sky over Austin was a dull, bruised gray, heavy, unmoving. Inside the small kitchen, a clock ticked softly above the sink, its rhythm painfully steady against the chaos that lingered in the air. Aaron Holt sat at the table, motionless. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. The blood on his hands had dried, caked under his fingernails, turning brown against the pale skin. He hadn't moved since the night before. Not really. He just sat there. The chair across from him was empty. Sara's chair. The plate from dinner was still there, untouched. A small pool of sauce hardened beside her fork. He stared at it until his vision blurred. 14 hours. That's how long it had been. 14 hours since the shouting stopped. 14 hours since the silence began. His thoughts drifted like smoke, fragments of memory, half real, half fantasy. Her voice echoing from the hallway, her hands trembling, the look in her eyes right before. He stopped himself. The memory was jagged, refusing to form a complete picture. His gaze shifted downward. The faint stains on the tiled floor stared back at him. He had tried to clean it, twice, but no amount of scrubbing had erased it completely. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. The words came out hoarse, broken. "I didn't mean to." But the house didn't answer. He rubbed his palms together, smearing the remnants of what he couldn't forget. His mind jumped to the next step. The questions, the explanations, the story. What would he tell them? He practiced in a low voice, almost like reading lines from a script. "She left. We argued, and she left." His throat tightened. "I don't know where she went. She just walked out." He swallowed, staring at his reflection in the dark window. "She got upset," he continued, louder now. "She wanted space, that's all." A shaky breath escaped him. "That's all." Bo. But then the truth crept in again. The sound of her screaming his name, the struggle, the moment when anger became something else entirely. His hand twitched violently, knocking over the coffee cup. The dark liquid spilled across the table, pooling near his wrist like a spreading shadow. He watched it for a long moment, lost. Then he laughed, a soft, uneven sound that cracked halfway through. It didn't sound like laughter. It sounded like breaking. On the counter behind him, the shattered pieces of Sara's phone still lay where they'd fallen. One half was dark, the other flickering weakly. He turned his head toward it, eyes empty. He picked it up carefully, holding it like something sacred. The cracked screen glowed faintly with the last remnants of her unsent message. "He's not who I thought." Aaron's lips trembled as he read the words again and again. "You didn't even send it," he whispered. "You didn't even give me a chance." A car passed outside, distant, casual. The world moved on as if nothing had happened here. He pressed his hands over his ears, shutting out the sound. "It wasn't supposed to end like this," he said, rocking slightly in the chair. "She wasn't supposed to leave." For a brief moment, his eyes flicked toward the backyard, toward the patch of disturbed soil near the old oak tree. Then he looked away. The clock kept ticking, each second heavier than the last. And somewhere deep in his mind, a new story began to take shape. One where he wasn't the monster. One where she had simply disappeared. The police station in downtown Dallas buzzed with the low hum of phones, keyboards, and voices that carried the dull rhythm of routine. But for Mia Thompson, every sound felt too slow, too detached. She stood at the front desk, clutching her phone, eyes swollen from a night without sleep. "My friend's missing," she said, her voice cracking. "Her name is Sara Malik. She flew here 2 days ago to see her boyfriend. I haven't heard from her since last night." The officer behind the desk nodded mechanically, typing. "When was the last time you spoke to her?" "Yesterday morning. She sounded nervous. Said something didn't feel right." Mia exhaled sharply, hands trembling. "And then I got this." She slid her phone across the counter. The screen displayed the last text from Sara, the one that never fully sent. "He's not who I thought." The officer's expression shifted. "We'll need her flight info and any details about the person she was visiting." "His name's Aaron Holt," Mia replied immediately. "He lives somewhere near Austin." Within hours, the missing person report was logged, and the case was forwarded to the Travis County Sheriff's Department. The procedural wheels began to turn, slow, methodical, precise. By mid-afternoon, 2 detectives sat inside a gray sedan parked along a rural Texas road, their GPS pinging softly. Detective Carla Reyes leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the tablet in her hand. "Phone last active here," she muttered, pointing at the screen. "Property registered to Aaron Holt." Her partner, Detective Jordan Price, glanced at the map, then at the long dirt driveway leading to a lone house surrounded by trees. "Let's take a look." The car crunched over gravel as they approached the home. Every window was covered. The air felt still, too still. Inside, Aaron moved frantically. The once tidy kitchen was now a storm of panic. Bleach bottles, rags, an overturned trash can. His shirt clung to his back with sweat as he wiped surfaces, scrubbing until his skin burned. He could hear his heartbeat over everything. He moved to the sink, rinsing a knife, his hands trembling violently. The metal glinted, and he froze, staring at the faint trace of red swirling down the drain. "Gone," he whispered to himself. "It's all gone now." But he knew it wasn't. Not really. Every corner of the house whispered her name. The indentation on the couch, the scent of her perfume, the half-packed suitcase in the hall. He looked out the window toward the backyard. The soil near the oak tree looked uneven, still damp from the early morning rain. He closed the curtain quickly, chest tightening. Outside, the detectives stepped out of their vehicle. Carla checked her notes. No calls or texts from her since last night. Flight records confirm she landed in Dallas. Cameras from the airport show Holt picking her up. Jordan nodded grimly. "Let's see if he's home." They walked toward the porch, the wooden boards creaking under their feet. Carla knocked. Inside, Aaron froze. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. He wiped his hands on a towel, smearing faint streaks of pink across the fabric, and forced a deep breath. He tried to steady himself, practiced calm, polite smile. When he opened the door, his voice came out too smooth. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Holt," Carla said, flashing her badge. "We're investigating a missing person. Sara Malik. She was last known to be with you." Aaron's jaw tightened. "Sara? Yeah. She left yesterday morning. We had an argument. She said she wanted some air." Jordan's gaze flicked past him into the house. "Mind if we come in?" Aaron hesitated for a fraction too long before stepping aside. "Sure," he said quietly. "Of course." As they entered, Carla noticed the faint chemical smell, bleach, sharp and unmistakable. Her eyes drifted to the kitchen floor, where streaks of uneven scrubbing caught the light. Aaron forced another smile. "Sorry for the mess. Been cleaning all morning." The detectives exchanged a look, and as the clock above the sink ticked softly, Aaron's pulse raced beneath his calm facade. Because outside, under the gray Texas sky, the ground behind his house hadn't settled yet. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds in weak, fractured rays as the detectives returned to Aaron Holt's property. The air smelled faintly of rain and bleach, a contrast too sharp to ignore. The calm veneer Aaron had worn earlier was beginning to crack. Detective Carla Reyes stood near the porch, arms crossed. "His story doesn't line up," she murmured to her partner. "Says she left in the morning, but no one's seen her since. No rideshare, no traffic cam footage, nothing." Detective Jordan Price looked down at the report in his hand. Neighbor down the road sent over footage from his security camera. Shows Sara arriving with him that night. She never left. Carla's jaw tightened. "That's enough for a warrant." Inside, Aaron paced the kitchen like a trapped animal. The ticking clock on the wall grew unbearable, each second a reminder that time was running out. His reflection in the window stared back at him, pale, hollow, trembling. He whispered to himself, rehearsing the lie again. She walked out. She walked out. But the words were losing meaning. His mind flickered between reality and memory. Flashes of Sara's face, her voice, the last look in her eyes before everything went dark. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. A knock shattered the silence. When he opened the door, Carla and Jordan stood with two uniformed officers behind them. "Mr. Holt," Carla said evenly, "we need to take another look around." Aaron swallowed hard. "I told you there's nothing to find." Carla met his eyes. "Then you won't mind if we check the backyard?" For a second, the color drained from his face. "The Backyard? Just raw. Outeen, she said. We'll be quick. Outside, the wind rustled through the tall grass as officers moved toward the oak tree. The soil there looked uneven, freshly disturbed despite Aaron's clumsy attempt to disguise it. Ground's soft, one officer noted. He motioned for the team. Start digging. Aaron stood frozen near the porch, his hands trembling, breath shallow. You can't just... But his words faded as the first shovel hit something solid. The sound was soft but final, the kind that silenced everything else. Carla's gaze hardened. Keep going. Dirt fell away in heavy clumps, revealing a pale fabric beneath. The officers paused, glancing at each other before lifting the edge. Sara's hand emerged first. Delicate, still, half covered in soil. The air seemed to collapse around them. Aaron made a sound that was neither word nor cry. His knees buckled, eyes wide with something between horror and release. No, he whispered, voice cracking. No, she slipped. I didn't mean... His words dissolved into sobs as he clutched his head, the weight of reality crushing what little delusion he had left. Flashback. 14 hours earlier, Sara had reached the front door, her phone clutched tight. I'm leaving, Aaron. This isn't safe anymore. He had stood in the hallway, shaking, voice trembling. Please, don't go. You said you cared. I do, she'd said softly, backing away. But not like this. And then, the shove, the struggle, the fall, the sound of her head hitting the edge of the table. A second of silence. Then nothing. Aaron had stared at her body for minutes that felt like hours, whispering apologies to the lifeless room. Back in the present, the officers led him away, his eyes fixed on the disturbed earth. As he passed the tree, his voice broke into a whisper. She was supposed to understand me. Detective Carla looked toward the grave, her expression unreadable. She did, she said quietly. Just too late. Time doesn't always move forward. Sometimes it loops, rewinds, forcing you to relive the moments you wish had never happened. The final 14 hours of Sara Malik's life began with laughter. Hour 0, 7:43 p.m., the beginning. Sara's flight had just landed. The Dallas air was heavy with summer humidity, clinging to her skin as she wheeled her suitcase toward the terminal doors. When she spotted Aaron waiting, flowers in hand, that nervous smile on his face, her heart lifted. They hugged awkwardly. She thought it was sweet, how shy he seemed in person. She had no idea that the distance between them had only just begun. Hour 2, 9:30 p.m., the drive to Austin. The road stretched endlessly into the dark. Country radio played softly while the headlights carved tunnels through the mist. Sara talked about everything: work, her mother, the restaurant she wanted to try in Austin. Aaron nodded, his hands gripping the wheel a little too tight. Every time she reached for his hand, he flinched slightly. She noticed but said nothing. She wanted the night to stay perfect. Hour 5, 12:16 a.m. The house. They pulled into the long, narrow driveway. The house stood alone, windows dark, curtains drawn. Quiet out here, Sara said lightly. Aaron smiled faintly. That's why I like it. Inside, the air smelled of dust and something faintly metallic. Sara noticed the locked basement door, the covered windows, but brushed it off. He was private, she told herself. Not strange, just private. Later that night, a muffled scream echoed from somewhere in the distance. Aaron froze mid-step. What was that? Sara asked, alarmed. Coyotes, he said too quickly. She forced a smile, though unease settled in her stomach like a stone. Hour 7, 2:10 a.m., the dinner confession. They sat across from each other under the dim kitchen light. Sara talked about her past, her parents, divorce, her fear of abandonment, her need to believe in good people. Aaron listened, jaw tight, eyes distant. When she asked about his scars, he went still. "Some things," he said finally, "don't need to be remembered." She didn't know it yet, but that was the moment he began to unravel. Hour 9, 4 o'clock a.m., the unlocked door. Sara couldn't sleep. She wandered the hall, drawn to the faint hum of the refrigerator. That's when she found the drawer, filled with prescriptions, medical forms, a folder labeled Post-Operative Complications, Reconstructive Procedure. She stood frozen, reading the words again and again. Her throat tightened. When she turned, Aaron was standing in the doorway, watching her. "You shouldn't have gone through my things," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "Aaron, what is this?" His eyes were wet but cold. "Something I tried to fix." Hour 10, 4:47 a.m. The secret revealed. He confessed in pieces. The failed surgery, the shame, the fear that she'd never love him if she knew. Sara's heart broke for him. And yet, part of her recoiled. Not because of what he was, but because of how much he had hidden. "I just wish you'd told me sooner," she said softly. His face twisted. "Sooner? So you could leave sooner?" Hour 11, 5:18 a.m. The breaking point. The argument ignited like fire to dry leaves. "You lied to me," she cried. "I had to," he shouted. "You would have left." The shouting turned to tears, then to desperation. When she tried to step past him, he blocked the door. "You said you'd understand me." Her voice cracked. "Aaron, please." Then came the shove, the stumble, the terrible silence. The clock ticked once, twice. And just like that, everything stopped. Hour 13, 6:39 a.m., the aftermath. Aaron sat beside her body, rocking gently. The first rays of dawn filtered through the blinds, painting his face in pale gold. He whispered apologies over and over like a prayer. By 7 a.m. he was digging. The earth was soft from the night's rain. He told himself he was saving her, saving what was left of her from judgment, from shame, from himself. But every shovelful felt heavier than the last. Hour 14, 8:02 a.m., the discovery. The police arrived hours later. By then, the house was spotless, or so he thought. They found the disturbed soil beneath the oak tree, and beneath it, her final piece. When they handcuffed him, Aaron didn't resist. He just stared at the sky and whispered her name. Later that night, at a candlelight vigil in Chicago, dozens gathered around a photo of Sara smiling, her laughter frozen in time. The wind carried the scent of lilies and wax. Mia stood before the crowd, voice trembling as she held up her phone. "This was the last message she tried to send me," she said, reading from the cracked screen. "He's not who I thought." The crowd fell silent. Mia's tears glistened in the flickering candlelight. "She always wanted love to mean something real," she whispered. "But sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who wear their pain as masks." She looked toward the dark sky. Sara's story isn't just about what was lost. It's about what should never be ignored. The candles flickered, one by one, until only silence remained. The echo of 14 hours that changed everything.